The year is 1542, and the first hints of dawn are creeping over the canals of Venice. You wake not to the sound of birds, but to the gentle lapping of water against stone. From your window, you can already smell the city stirring. The air carries the faint, foul miasma of 1,000 lives pressed together, a scent you have learnt to ignore. Your own work, however, is a world away from that filth. This is your life as a speziale, a respected apothecary. You unbolt the heavy wooden doors to your shop, the speziaria, and the day truly begins. Your shop is situated on a prominent street corner, a beacon of elegance and order. As you step inside, you are greeted by a carefully constructed world of sensory delight. The air inside your speziaria is thick with the most wonderful aromas. You can pick out the sharp scent of exotic spices, the deep, earthy smell of dried herbs, and the sweet fragrance of perfumed oils. A goldsmith once said that only paradise could smell better than a Venetian pharmacy, and you take a certain pride in that. This pleasant atmosphere is your first and most important tool. It draws people in and puts them at ease, a welcome escape from the streets outside. In your shop, you are a master of perception. Your walls are lined with carved wood paneling, maybe even a few small religious frescoes to suggest piety. Hundreds of ornate Maiolica jars, the beautiful ceramic containers known as albarelli, line your shelves. They hold everything from common medicinal herbs to the vibrant pigments you sell to the city's most famous artists. These jars, your gleaming brass scales, and your delicate glass distillation equipment are not just tools. They are props on a stage. They project an image of scientific authority, of wealth, and of access to a world beyond the everyday. To enhance this effect, you display your collection of curiosities. A preserved crocodile hangs from the ceiling, its leathery skin dry to the touch. In a velvet-lined box, you keep a long, spiraled tusk, which you tell your wealthier clients is the horn of a unicorn. These objects signal that you possess rare and powerful secrets of the natural world. Your customers believe you. They have to. Their trust is the foundation of your entire enterprise. Through it all, you maintain a calm and reassuring presence, the very picture of a respectable merchant. People come to you for remedies, for gossip, and for a friendly game of chess. They see a healer, a man of science, a pillar of the community. They do not see the work you do when the doors are closed. Now, let's move past the fragrant, elegant facade of the public shop. Behind a heavy curtain, you enter the back room. This is your laboratory, your true domain. The atmosphere here changes instantly. The sweet perfumes of the shop are replaced by the sharp, chemical tang of your work. This is not a social space. It is a place of intense, focused creation filled with the real tools of your trade. You see enormous mortars and pestles, some so large they require all your strength to use. There are delicate scales for precise measurement and complex glass distillation equipment, the duck-billed alembics bubbling away softly over a low flame. Here, in the quiet of your workshop, the dual nature of your craft is laid bare. The very same skills and knowledge that lend you public prestige are the source of your secret power. You might spend part of your morning instructing an apprentice, showing him how to grind chamomile into a fine powder for a nobleman's soothing tea. You teach him to feel the fine, soft texture, a sign of quality. But later, alone, you will use another mortar and pestle for a different task. You carefully pulverize a crystalline mineral. It is arsenic trioxide, a tasteless white powder. Or perhaps you are drying the dark leaves and purple berries of Atropa belladonna, their scent faintly bitter in the air. Your system of weights and measures allows for incredible precision, a critical skill when you work. The line between a therapeutic dose and a fatal one is perilously thin, and you walk it with an expert's confidence. Your knowledge comes from ancient handbooks, the materia medica, and from the city's official pharmacopoeias, but you are using this knowledge for purposes those authors never intended. Your work is interrupted by a soft knock. A nervous client, a courtier's servant sent by his master, is ushered quietly into the back room. He avoids your gaze, his hands trembling slightly. The transaction is swift and discreet. This is not a simple sale of a substance, but the provision of a solution to a problem. The servant explains the need, to remove a political rival who stands in his master's way. You listen patiently, like a physician diagnosing a social ailment. You ask a few questions, your voice low and calm. and then you offer your professional recommendation. A heavy purse of gold coins is placed on your workbench. In exchange, you provide a small, innocuous package. It might be a folded paper of powder, or a small vial of a colorless, odorless liquid, something easily mistaken for medicine or even perfume. A deadly secret has been brokered in a place of public trust. As the afternoon sun warms the city, your work takes you out of the shop. An afternoon delivery to a wealthy patron's palazzo is a common and expected service for a speziale of your standing. It also provides the perfect cover for your next move. The delivery itself is entirely legitimate. Today, it is a pair of expensive perfumed gloves, a luxury item highly popular among the aristocracy. This task allows you to cross the threshold of your target's household without raising a single shred of suspicion. You are simply the trusted apothecary making a delivery. Once inside the Grand Palazzo, your role shifts. You are more than a merchant now, you are a spy. With a trained and subtle eye, you begin to observe the inner workings of the household. You listen to the sounds coming from the kitchen, the clatter of pots and the chatter of the staff. You note the dynamics between family members in the main hall, catching the flicker of resentment in a younger son's eyes or the strained formality between the lord and his wife. You pay close attention to the personal habits of the intended victim, the man who will soon find himself out of your client's way. Your senses are on high alert, gathering the information you need. Your most crucial task inside these walls is to identify your accomplice. This internal conspirator is essential for the final act. Perhaps it is a disgruntled cook with a long-held grievance, or a jealous servant who has passed over for a promotion. It could even be a trusted valet, a person who can be easily bribed or perhaps blackmailed into service. You already have someone in mind, a kitchen hand you have spoken with before. You find him in a quiet corridor, away from the prying eyes of the rest of the staff. The exchange is a moment of quiet conspiracy. There is no need for overt discussion, the plan has already been settled. The poison, a small vial, is concealed within the luxurious packaging of the gloves. As you hand over the box, you give him instructions for the delivery. Your fingers brush against his for just a moment, a pre-arranged signal. You pass him the vial, and his own hand closes around it, hiding it from view. A knowing glance is all that passes between you. You have successfully infiltrated the target's inner sanctum and armed your agent. Your work here is done, and you take your leave with polite and formal bows. As evening falls, your long day culminates in a final, chilling act of professional detachment. You are attending a lavish banquet at the very same palazzo you visited only a few hours earlier. Your presence here is entirely plausible. As a respected member of the citizen class and a purveyor of luxury goods to the host, your invitation would not be considered out of place in the slightest. You are a ghost at this feast, a silent observer moving through the opulent rooms. Your true purpose is known only to you and your co-conspirator in the kitchens. You take a glass of wine, the cool liquid a small comfort in the warm, crowded room. From your position on the periphery, you watch as the grand feast unfolds. The air is filled with music, laughter, and the rich smells of roasted meats and expensive spices. The tension of the moment is palpable, but only to you. You see the target, a man of some importance, laughing and conversing with his companions, completely unaware of his rapidly approaching fate. He raises his goblet in a toast, his voice booming across the hall. It is a performance, just like yours. Then you see it. Your accomplice, the trusted servant, moves with practiced ease through the throng of guests. He approaches the main table and, with a steady hand, pours wine into a specific, ornate goblet. The target's goblet. The poison is a slow-acting concoction, one of your own specialities. There will be no immediate, dramatic reaction. The victim drinks deeply from the cup, and the moment passes entirely unnoticed. The official food taster, who sampled the dishes and wine minutes before they were served, has been rendered completely and utterly ineffective. The crime has been committed in plain sight, perfectly masked by the noise and ceremony of the banquet. You do not feel a sense of triumph. There is no elation, only the cold, quiet satisfaction of a craftsman whose work is complete. Your task is done. Before the first symptoms begin to appear, before any hint of suspicion can possibly arise, you melt back into the crowd. You make your polite excuses and you depart the palazzo. You disappear into the dark, bustling streets of the Renaissance city. Your presence at the feast was as fleeting and unmemorable as a shadow. Your anonymity is your ultimate defense. You have turned society's trust into a weapon, and no one is the wiser. There, we have survived the first chapter of our journey into the apothecary's shadow, witnessing the quiet exchange that seals a deadly pact. And yet, the most infamous secrets are still locked away. We are marching towards the whisper of the glove of poison, and the bitter family ambition of the Borgias that would stain an entire dynasty. But a word of caution before we unstopper these vials. The secretive guild that sanctions these dark chronicles has certain protocols. Liking this video adds your seal to our register, marking you as an accomplice to this inquiry. Subscribing to the channel formally inducts you into our clandestine order, ensuring you are present for every revelation to come. To neglect these rites is to risk being disavowed, your contribution lost to the annals of history, like an anonymous victim of an untraceable toxin. To avoid such an ignominious fate, I strongly advise you make your mark. Our safe passage into the next chamber depends on it. The late Renaissance evening finds you in your study, standing before your poisoner's cabinet. This isn't a chest filled with bubbling potions or magical artifacts. It is a place of profound knowledge, a collection of what scholars call materia medica. You understand the therapeutic properties of all these substances, but you have learnt to pervert them, turning nature's remedies into its most terrifying weapons. Your shelves are lined not with exotic curiosities but with common plants and minerals. Their lethality is unlocked by your sophisticated understanding of dosage, delivery, and most importantly, deception. You know exactly what you're looking for. You reach for a simple ceramic jar on a high shelf. The air in your apothecary is thick with the scent of dried herbs and beeswax, but this container gives off no aroma at all. Inside is a fine white crystalline powder. It could be mistaken for sugar or perhaps flour. This is arsenic trioxide, or as you prefer to call it, white arsenic. It is the king of poisons, the poison of kings. Its popularity comes from a perfect combination of deadly power and almost flawless stealth. The substance is readily available to any apothecary like yourself. You know it has legitimate uses in medicine, alchemy, and even as a pigment or a simple rat poison. No one would question why you have it. Now, you take a small pinch of the powder between your fingers. It feels like fine, soft dust. Its two most crucial properties for your work are that it is completely odorless and tasteless. This makes it virtually undetectable when you or your client mixes it into a cup of wine or a bowl of stew. Some accounts you've read even suggest it improves the taste of wine, a truly sinister quality that makes your job even easier. Your client wants to eliminate a rival for a lucrative trade contract. You know this small, unassuming powder is the perfect tool for a crime that will likely never be recognized as a crime at all. The true genius of arsenic as your weapon of choice lies in its brilliant ability to mimic the symptoms of the era's most common and fatal illnesses. In a world without modern pathology, you know that cholera and dysentery are specters that haunt every city. An acute dose of your powder will provoke violent abdominal cramping. It will cause relentless nausea and vomiting, followed by severe diarrhea. The target will feel a fire in their belly, a twisting agony that feels just like the bloody flux so many people fear. This catastrophic loss of fluids ultimately leads to death from something called hypovolemic shock. For the victim, it is a miserable and painful end. For you, it is a masterpiece of deception. In the aftermath, a physician would almost certainly be called. Consider the scene in the victim's lavish bedchamber. The air would be heavy with the scent of sickness and sweat. The physician, armed only with the limited knowledge of the age, would examine the body. He would note the symptoms described by the distraught family, and he would, with complete confidence, diagnose a fatal bout of gastroenteritis. It was a tragically common occurrence, a sad but unremarkable event. The family might grieve, but no one would suspect foul play. This perfect medical mimicry is what made arsenic the most valuable substance in your cabinet. This quality earned the powder its most famous and cynical nickname, poudre de succession or inheritance powder. It is the poison of choice across Europe for those looking to speed up a promotion or secure a fortune. You've heard the whispers and read the pamphlets. Ambitious sons use it on their fathers, impatient heirs on their aging relatives, and courtiers on their political rivals. It is the silent key that unlocks titles and estates. The great families of the Italian Renaissance, names you know well like the Borgias and the Medicis, were widely accused of using arsenic to consolidate their power. They cemented its reputation as the ultimate tool of avarice and ambition, and you are simply continuing that proud tradition. But here's the thing, your cabinet holds more than just minerals. Let's move to a different kind of tool, one rooted in beauty and deception. Imagine you are in the private chambers of a noblewoman. The room smells of rosewater and expensive perfumes. On her vanity, next to brushes and pots of rouge, you see a small, elegant vial of liquid. This is an extract of the plant belladonna. Its name is Italian, meaning beautiful woman. Its purpose, on the surface, is entirely innocent. You see Renaissance women place a few drops of this belladonna extract into their eyes. It has the fascinating effect of dilating their pupils, creating a look that is considered captivating and deeply seductive. The widespread nature of this custom provides the perfect cover for you. The presence of belladonna in a noblewoman's chambers is entirely normal, even expected. If you were to provide this substance to a client, no one would think twice about her possessing it. She could claim it was for her beauty routine, and who would argue? You understand the power of this social camouflage. It is as potent as the poison itself. This cosmetic, however, this accepted part of high society fashion, conceals a very deadly secret. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Through it all, you remain calm, your knowledge your shield. Now, within that beautiful plant with its alluring dark berries lies a powerful secret. You know that the plant's active tropane alkaloids, primarily atropine and scopolamine, are devastating poisons. In the small doses used for cosmetics, they are harmless, but if you were to prepare a larger dose, the effects are a terrifying and agonizing journey into madness. For the person who ingests it, the experience begins with an extreme and uncomfortable dryness of the mouth and throat. They would feel as if they had swallowed sand, their vision would blur, and a deep sense of confusion would cloud their mind. This is just the beginning. From there, the victim's reality unravels. They descend into a state of acute delirium, plagued by vivid and horrifying hallucinations. Modern clinical accounts describe patients feeling as if the very room is tipping over. They might see menacing shapes moving on the floor or become wildly agitated, lashing out at things only they can see. For your purposes, it's a truly dreadful way to die. The victim eventually succumbs to paralysis and finally respiratory failure. Its association with these horrifying effects and its rumoured use in witches' brews earned it another name, deadly nightshade. You even recall reading the old Roman chroniclers who claimed the Empress Livia Drusilla used its juice to murder her own husband, the Emperor Augustus. Beauty and death intertwined in a single plant. Your knowledge, however, is not limited to the modern tools of your time. Your education is built upon a foundation laid in the ancient world. In your library, you have copies of the great classical texts, and the poisons of Greece and Rome remain potent tools in your arsenal. You find yourself in your study late at night, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the rustle of parchment. You are reading about hemlock or Conium maculatum. It was the infamous state poison of ancient Athens, forever associated with the execution of Socrates back in 399 BCE. You study the descriptions of his death, learning from the past. The primary toxin in hemlock is something called conium, a potent neurotoxin. You learn that it induces a slow, creeping paralysis. Imagine what that must feel like. The victim would first feel a strange coldness and a growing numbness in their feet and legs. The sensation would gradually, relentlessly ascend through their body. You can almost feel the chill moving up your own limbs as you read. What made hemlock particularly terrifying and useful in certain situations was that while the body was failing, the mind remained perfectly clear and lucid. The victim was a prisoner in their own body, fully aware of their impending doom until the very end. This dreadful paralysis would continue its climb until it reached the respiratory muscles. At that point, death would come by asphyxiation. The person would be unable to draw a breath, fully conscious of what was happening. Adding to its danger and its usefulness was its deceptive appearance. You know from your botanical studies that the hemlock plant bears a strong resemblance to harmless relatives in the carrot family like parsley. History is filled with stories of accidental poisonings because of this. A mistake in the kitchen garden could be lethal, which also means a deliberate mistake is very difficult to prove. It's another layer of protection for you and your client. Another ancient terror you keep in your mental cabinet is aconite, or Aconitum napalus. It is known by many names: wolfsbane, monkshood. It was one of the most feared poisons of antiquity, renowned for its incredible speed and potency. Its reputation was amplified by mythology. You've read Ovid's Metamorphoses, which claimed the plant first sprang from the frothing saliva of Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades. The active alkaloid aconitine is a violent cardiotoxin. Ingestion leads to a terrifyingly rapid onset of symptoms. The victim would first feel a numbness and tingling in their mouth and throat. This would be followed by nausea, vomiting, and then severe cardiac arrhythmias. The heart would beat erratically before failing completely. It was so lethal it was used to poison arrow tips for hunting wolves, hence the name wolfsbane. So next time you think about your work, you understand it is an art of quiet acquisition and subtle knowledge. An apothecary poisoner like yourself did not need to seek out hidden suppliers for his entire arsenal. Many of your most effective tools were already part of your legitimate inventory. You sell arsenic as a common ingredient for various remedies or commercial products. You sell belladonna openly for cosmetic purposes. Your true expertise lies not just in chemical preparation, but in navigating this world of dual-use items. You are a master of hiding in plain sight. For plants not commonly stocked, like hemlock or aconite, your skill as an herbalist allows you to easily forage them from the wild. You know which damp woods to search and which riverbanks hide the deadliest secrets. The art is in acquiring these things without raising suspicion, blending the procurement of lethal substances with the mundane flow of legitimate commerce. The effectiveness of your poisons is therefore not just a matter of their chemical properties. It is a matter of their social and medical camouflage. By mimicking common diseases, hiding behind cosmetic trends, or resembling edible plants, your tools allow you to operate with a degree of impunity that is, for now, absolute. In the end, the poison is just the weapon. Your knowledge is what makes it invisible. You are in a grand hall during the height of the Renaissance. The air is thick with the scent of roasted meats, expensive perfumes, and a faint, sharp undertone of paranoia. You are a guest at a magnificent feast, but you aren't here for the food. Your gaze is fixed on a powerful prince at the high table, laughing with his companions. Between you and your target stands a formidable obstacle, the food taster. In this era, this man, sometimes known by the old Roman title Praegastator, is more than just an employee. He is the first and most visible line of defense, a high-ranking official who manages the entire journey of food from the kitchen fires to the gilded plate. His job is to prevent what you are about to do, but you aren't worried. You watch as the taster performs his ritual. He takes a small portion of the prince's food, a sip of his wine, and waits. He is looking for the sudden grip of pain, the telltale sign of a fast-acting poison, but he feels nothing. Your methods are far more subtle. The art of the perfect crime required not just chemical knowledge, but a deep understanding of psychology and patience. You haven't poisoned the food with something that strikes like lightning. Instead, you have chosen a substance that works with the quiet inevitability of the tide. The taster, feeling no ill effects, nods to the prince, giving his silent approval. Your chosen weapon on this occasion is likely arsenic, or perhaps the legendary concoction known as aqua tofana. In your hand, or rather in the prince's goblet, is a slow-acting poison. The prince confidently drains his cup, enjoying the celebration. He feels nothing amiss. The warmth of the wine spreads through him, and the feast continues into the night. Your work is done, and you can simply melt back into the crowd. The real genius of this method was the temporal dislocation, the gap between the act and its consequence. There would be no immediate illness to trace back to this specific meal. Somehow, they managed to live with this constant fear. For the powerful, every meal was a potential death sentence. The taster's ritual was a piece of theatre meant to provide comfort, but you know it's a flawed performance. The prince will return to his chambers tonight feeling perfectly fine. Tomorrow, he might feel a little sluggish. The day after, a fever may begin to bloom. by the time he falls gravely ill, this banquet will be a distant memory. His death, when it comes days or even weeks from now, will be lamented as a sudden digestive ailment, a tragic but natural event, and you will be long gone, your presence at the feast forgotten. This was the poisoner's greatest advantage, turning murder into a simple matter of unfortunate health. Shh. Now, let's imagine a different scenario, one that requires a bit more daring. You are still at the same feast, the air still heavy with suspicion. The taster is still just as vigilant, but this time your poison is not slow. It's designed to work quickly, and you need a way to bypass that diligent servant entirely. Your secret is not in the wine, but on the cup itself. It's a method that weaponizes the very vessel from which your target drinks. All you need is the right accessory and a moment of calculated carelessness. You have a beautiful ring on your finger, a common enough piece of jewelry, but this one has a tiny, hidden compartment, a hollow space filled with a drop of potent contact poison. As you move through the crowded hall, you might pretend to stumble near the high table. Your hand shoots out to steady yourself, your finger brushing for a fraction of a second against the rim of the prince's personal goblet. It's a move so swift, so seemingly accidental, that no one gives it a second thought. But in that moment, a clear, viscous drop of poison has been transferred to the cool metal. The taster can sip the wine all day long. He is tasting the contents, not the container. When the prince raises the goblet to his lips, the poison will be absorbed directly, bypassing the entire charade of protection. Through it all, you remain a simple guest, lost in the revelry. But here's the thing, the most terrifying methods weren't always about food and drink. The Renaissance imagination was haunted by invisible weapons, ways of delivering death that turned everyday objects into instruments of murder. The fear these methods generated was often more powerful than their practical application. Imagine you are at court, seeking favor from a powerful noble. A gift is expected. You present a pair of exquisitely crafted gloves, a high-status fashion accessory. The leather is soft, and it's been treated with a heavy, sweet perfume. This brings us to one of the most enduring legends, the glove of poison. The story is famously, and perhaps falsely, associated with Catherine de' Medici. It was rumored that she used just such a gift to assassinate Jeanne d'Albret, the Protestant Queen of Navarre. The idea was that a gift of gloves, a common courtly gesture, could be a death sentence. You can just imagine the scene, the Queen admiring your thoughtful present, unaware of the danger lurking within the very fibers of the leather. The fear was real because it felt so plausible. It twisted a symbol of favor into a weapon of treachery, planting seeds of doubt in every social interaction. So why were these perfumed gloves so common in the first place? The truth was a matter of sensory relief. In the Renaissance, the tanning process used to make leather often involved unpleasant materials like animal excrement. This left the finished product with a foul, lingering odor. Your beautiful new gloves would have been almost unwearable without being drenched in strong scents like lavender or musk to cover the smell. You can almost feel the soft leather on your skin, the powerful floral scent masking something much more sinister. Congratulations, you are now fashionable and potentially absorbing a deadly toxin. The theory behind the poison glove was that a potent contact poison, something like aconite, could be worked directly into this perfumed paste. As the wearer's hands grew warm inside the gloves, their pores would open, allowing the poison to be slowly absorbed through the skin. This method was the stuff of nightmares. But while the story about Jeanne d'Albret's death has been largely discredited by modern historians who point to tuberculosis as the far more likely culprit, the rumor itself tells you everything you need to know about the anxieties of the age. The human impact was that fear became the real weapon. Don't worry, that lovely gift from your rival is probably fine, but the seed of doubt has been planted. This paranoia extended to other mundane objects, transforming them into potential threats. Consider the poisoned letter. You are in your study in the 15th century. A message arrives. The paper feels a little strange, maybe slightly gritty to the touch. You break the wax seal and unfold it. As you read, you might unconsciously lift a hand to rub your eyes or mouth. Accounts from the period mention Caterina Sforza, the formidable ruler of Forli, for allegedly sending poisoned letters to her enemies, including the Pope. A poisoner could infuse the paper or even the ink with a fine powder like arsenic. When the victim handled the letter, turning the pages, they could inhale the powder or absorb it through their skin over time. The same principle applied to the poisoned prayer book. A a particularly diabolical concept. This fear was so pervasive it even appeared in popular culture. In the famous play The Duchess of Malfic, a character is murdered by being forced to kiss a poisoned Bible. This was a powerful metaphor for the era. It demonstrated how the poisoner's art could corrupt objects of faith, learning, and communication. It sent a clear message to everyone, from the common person to the king. In this world, no object was truly safe, and no gesture was entirely innocent. Your personal space, the very tools of your daily life, could be turned against you. Now we arrive at the most legendary poison of all, a substance so shrouded in myth that its very name became a whisper of dread. This brings us into the world of the Borgias, the powerful and ruthless family that dominated Rome at the turn of the 16th century. Their alleged signature weapon was a poison known as cantarella. During the papacy of Alexander VI, it was said the Borgias used this secret formula to dispose of inconvenient cardinals and political rivals. Upon their death, the family would conveniently seize their fortunes. This was not just murder, it was a business model. The legend of cantarella grew to fantastic proportions. People believed it was a so-called time poison. Its potency was said to be adjustable, so that a skilled poisoner like you could choose whether your victim died in a day, a month, or even a year, all depending on the dose you administered. It was rumoured to be so unique and powerful that no antidote existed. But here's the thing about legends, they often conceal a kernel of truth. While the exact formula was a closely guarded secret that died with the Borgias, historical accounts and modern analysis give us an educated guess. The truth was likely simpler, yet somehow more horrifying. The base ingredient was almost certainly arsenic, the king of poisons and the poison of kings. However, evidence suggests cantarella was a more complex concoction. A truly grotesque recipe was recorded by a 17th century physician. According to his account, you would start by feeding a pig a massive dose of arsenic. The animal would then be hung by its hind legs. As it died in agony, a toxic froth would collect around its mouth. This froth, containing the arsenic mixed with what were called alkaloids of putrefaction, would be carefully scraped off and preserved. The belief was that this process created a substance far more deadly than simple arsenic, a poison born from pain itself. Another compelling theory helps explain the name. The word cantarella may be a diminutive form of Cantharidus, the scientific name for the blister beetle, also known as the Spanish fly. This insect secretes a toxic substance called cantharidin. To your Renaissance contemporaries, cantharidin was known for two things. In small doses, it was a powerful aphrodisiac. In larger doses, it was a deadly poison. It was described as a whitish powder that had a pleasant, sweet taste, almost like sugar. This made it incredibly easy for you to dissolve it, unnoticed, into a goblet of wine, the Borgias' alleged delivery method of choice. In the end, whether it was a complex brew from a suffering animal or a sweet powder from an insect, cantarella became the ultimate symbol of the Borgia family's ruthless and treacherous ambition. You find yourself in Rome near the very end of the 15th century, attending a lavish banquet at the Apostolic Palace, the very heart of Christendom. The air is thick with the competing smells of incense, roasting game, and the sweet perfume worn by cardinals and nobles. Your fine silk robes feel heavy on your shoulders as you sit at a long table laden with silver platters. The room hums with the low murmur of powerful men cutting deals and forging alliances. At the head of it all sits your host, Pope Alexander VI, a man whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. This is the world of the Borgias, a family whose name would soon become a synonym for corruption, greed, and a very particular method of murder. Your eyes drift from the Pope to his son, Cesare Borgia. He stands near his father's gilded chair, a shadow in the candlelight. He is a man of intense, quiet energy, a brilliant and utterly merciless commander, whose exploits would later inspire a man named Niccolò Machiavelli. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the cool marble floors. Cesare's ambition is a fire that needs constant fuel, and his father, the Pope, is more than willing to provide it. You understand that every acre of land, every gold florin, is a means to an end. That end is the absolute power of their family, and they seem willing to do anything to achieve it. Then you see her, Lucrezia Borgia, the Pope's daughter. In the flickering torchlight, her beauty is almost otherworldly. She moves with a practiced grace, a living, breathing symbol of her family's influence. But you notice the way her eyes dart around the room, the subtle tension in her hands. You learn that she is little more than a beautiful piece on her family's chessboard. Her marriages are her father's political tools, forged and broken to suit the needs of the moment. Her life is not her own. It belongs to the grand, bloody ambitions of her father and brother, and you can sense the immense weight of that on her shoulders. Now a servant approaches you. He carries a special decanter of wine, reserved only for a select few guests, of which you are one tonight. Congratulations, this is the moment you have been hearing about in whispers throughout Rome. The wine is said to be the Borgias' signature tool, a poison known as cantarella. As the dark red liquid fills your golden goblet, you realize the simple, terrifying genius of their rumored plan. You are a wealthy cardinal, and your lands and fortune are vast. Upon your untimely death, your estate would revert to the papacy. The Pope would seize your wealth, and that wealth would flow directly into the war chests of Cesare's armies. It's a simple, elegant, and chillingly effective business model. But here's the thing. As you sit there, staring at the wine, a question forms in your mind. How much of this terrifying story is actually true? The tales of the Borgias and their poisoned cups are so dramatic, so perfectly villainous, that they feel more like theatre than history. For centuries, they have been cast as the first family of poison, but when historians began to sift through the evidence, they found a much more complex and murky picture. The truth, it seems, was that the Borgias were masters of another dark art, the art of propaganda, though they were more often its victims than its perpetrators. Let's look again at Cesare Borgia, the supposed mastermind of these poison plots. If you were to follow him not in the Vatican's halls but on the battlefield, you would see a very different man. He was a soldier, a man of action and direct violence. Evidence suggests his enemies were far more likely to feel the sharp point of a dagger in their ribs or the tightening grip of a garrote around their neck. These methods were swift, certain, and very public. They sent a clear message. A slow, uncertain poison that could take days to work doesn't quite fit the profile of a man like Cesare. It feels too subtle, too passive for someone so defined by his ruthless efficiency and martial prowess. So if the Borgias weren't poisoning every wealthy cardinal in sight, where did these stories come from? You can find the answer in the crowded piazzas and shadowy alleyways of Rome. Lean closer and listen to the whispers. The names you hear over and over are not just Borgia, but also della Rovere and Sforza. These were the rival families, powerful Italian dynasties who saw the Borgias as a threat to their own ambitions. You realize that discrediting your enemy is just as effective as killing them. Spreading rumors about their depravity, their corruption, and their use of poison was a powerful weapon in the political battles of the Renaissance. A crucial part of this was the Borgia family's origin. Their name was originally Borga. They were from Spain, and in the fiercely competitive world of Italian city-states, this made them outsiders. Imagine you are an Italian noble. Your family has lived in these lands for generations. Now, you must answer to a Spanish pope. You feel a deep, simmering resentment. Poison was widely seen as a cowardly and deceitful crime, a weapon used by schemers, not honorable warriors. By accusing the Borgias of being poisoners, their enemies were painting them as treacherous and untrustworthy foreigners, attacking their very right to rule using a poison of xenophobia and slander. This accusation of poisoning was a masterstroke of political character assassination. It stuck to the Borgias precisely because it was so hard to disprove. Imagine you are a physician in the year 1500. A powerful cardinal has just died after having dinner with the Pope. His family claims he was poisoned. You are called to examine the body, which is already beginning to decompose in the humid Roman air. What tools do you have? There are no toxicology reports, no forensic labs. You can only look at the symptoms described by others, symptoms which could match any number of sudden, violent illnesses that were common at the time. Without any scientific way to prove or disprove the accusation, rumor was free to harden into historical fact. Through this process, the Borgia Black legend was born, and no figure better embodies this legend than Lucrezia. Let's go back to that banquet. You watch her move through the room, a vision of beauty and grace, but the whispers have coloured your perception. You see her as a femme fatale, a seductive and deadly woman. Someone next to you murmurs that the large, ornate ring on her finger is actually a hollow compartment, filled with a powder she can slip into a drink with a flick of her wrist. This is the image that history has given you, the portrait of a beautiful woman as the alluring face of her family's sinister legacy. She became the symbol of their evil. However, modern historians digging through the archives have found a very different woman. They offer a much more sympathetic and, frankly, more believable portrait. The evidence strongly suggests that Lucrezia was not a willing participant in any of this. Instead, you see her as an unwilling pawn in the grand ambitions of her father and brother. Your heart aches for her. Her entire life was dictated by their needs. She was a currency to be exchanged for political power, a beautiful object to be traded for strategic alliances. She was not the one holding the poison in many ways. She was one of its victims, trapped in a toxic family dynamic. Don't worry. The truth of her situation eventually becomes clear when you look at what happened to her husbands. She was married off 3 separate times, each for a clear political motive. When her first husband was no longer useful, the marriage was simply annulled. When her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, fell out of favour with her increasingly powerful brother, Cesare didn't bother with poison. He had Alfonso murdered in a very direct and brutal attack right on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. This violent act reveals the true nature of the family's power. It also shows you how little control Lucrezia had over her own life, or the lives of those she loved. The most compelling evidence for this revised view of Lucrezia comes from what happened when she finally managed to escape her family. Imagine you travel with her as she leaves the corrupt, scheming atmosphere of Rome behind. Her third marriage is to Alfonso d'Este, the future Duke of Ferrara. As you enter the city, you can feel a change in the air. It's cleaner, calmer. Here, far from the suffocating influence of her father and brother, Lucrezia finally has a chance to become her own person. You see a genuine happiness in her that you never saw in Rome. It was a true marriage, and it was her salvation. In Ferrara, you get to see the real Lucrezia Borgia. She transforms into a respected and beloved duchess. She establishes a vibrant court, a celebrated centre for art, music, and literature. You walk through her palace and hear poets reciting their work and musicians playing new compositions. She was a capable administrator and a generous patron of the arts. She earned the admiration and loyalty of her people. This woman, this intelligent and cultured ruler, is simply impossible to reconcile with the sinister image of the incestuous poisoner from the Roman propaganda. Through it all, she showed a resilience that is far more compelling than any dark myth. Somehow, they managed to make the stories stick. The image of Lucrezia with her poison ring proved to be more popular than the reality of the Duchess of Ferrara with her paintbrushes and poetry books. The persona of the beautiful poisoner was not a reflection of her true character. It was just another element of the anti-Borgia campaign, a convenient fiction used to demonize the entire family. They made her the face of their crimes, both real and imagined. In the end, the most potent and enduring poison associated with the Borgias was not Cantarella. It was the poison of propaganda, a concoction brewed by their enemies that stained their name for 500 years. Our story of poison so far has been one of popes and princes, of grand political schemes played out in stone castles. But now we turn our attention away from the powerful and toward the powerless. In 17th century Italy, you are a woman. The world around you is full of vibrant art and soaring architecture, but your own world is incredibly small. The air in the city is thick with the smell of wood smoke and baking bread, but the air in your home feels stale, recycled. Your life is not your own. According to the law, you are the property of your father, and when you marry, that ownership simply transfers to your husband. Your marriage was not your choice. It was a contract, a business deal between families for money or influence. Your consent was a minor detail. Now, you find yourself trapped. Your home has rough, textured wool blankets on the bed, and a constant chill that seems to seep from the stone floors. You listen to the sound of your husband's heavy footsteps approaching, and your heart sinks. Divorce is impossible under church law. There is no legal way out of a loveless union, and certainly no escape from a cruel one. For so many women, this was a life sentence, a quiet, daily desperation with no visible end. You feel utterly and completely stuck. But here's the thing, when a system creates that much desperation, it also creates a market for unusual solutions. Enter Giulia Tofana. She was not a political player or a noblewoman. According to historical records, she was a criminal entrepreneur. She looked at the quiet suffering of women like you and saw a business opportunity. She built a thriving, secret enterprise based on one simple, elegant product. She didn't sell power or land. She sold a very specific service, an escape route for women who had no other options. She built an organization to help wives become widows. Giulia's operation was remarkable for its structure. It was an all-female criminal network, a quiet sisterhood of poisoners operating right under the noses of their husbands and fathers. Her business model was unique, catering exclusively to this niche market. She understood her clients perfectly because their story was the story of every woman around her. You wouldn't find her in a palace plotting a coup. You would hear about her through a whisper from a trusted friend, a rumor shared in a hushed tone while mending clothes. Her name represented a dangerous, forbidden kind of hope, a potential end to a life of silent misery. For women like you, her existence changed everything. Now, how do you deliver a product like this without getting caught? This is where Giulia Tofana's genius truly shines. Her signature creation was called Aqua Tofana. You can just feel the small vial in your hand. It is cool and smooth to the touch. The liquid inside is completely clear, like water. It has no smell and no taste. This was its first masterpiece of design. It could be mixed into a cup of wine or a bowl of soup without your husband ever knowing. A few drops, and the process would begin, silently and invisibly. This was not a weapon of brute force. It was an instrument of deadly subtlety. The real brilliance, however, was in the packaging and marketing. The poison was sold in small glass bottles, cleverly disguised as one of two things. Sometimes it was packaged as a popular cosmetic fluid, the kind of thing you would use to treat blemishes. Other times, and more cleverly, it was labelled Manna of St. Nicholas. This was a real religious relic, a blessed oil said to seep from the tomb of St. Nicholas and possess healing powers. Congratulations, you now have a vial of deadly poison that you can hide in plain sight. It sits right there on your vanity table, nestled between your perfumes and powders, looking for all the world like a lady's cosmetic or a symbol of her piety. Evidence suggests the formula for Aqua Tofana was a carefully crafted cocktail. The primary ingredient was arsenic, a classic choice, but Tofana likely mixed it with small amounts of lead and belladonna. This combination was key. The other ingredients helped to mask the slight metallic taste that arsenic could sometimes have. More importantly, they enhanced the effects, making the poison's symptoms even harder to diagnose. This wasn't just poison, it was a product that had been thoroughly researched and developed for a specific purpose. It was designed to be the perfect tool for a silent crime, ensuring that the user, a woman like you, was protected. The feeling of having that little bottle in your possession is immense. You glance at it every day. Your husband might even pick it up, read the pious label, and put it back down, completely oblivious. The cold glass vial represents a secret power that is entirely your own. In a world where you have no legal standing, no voice, and no control, this small object is a declaration of independence. It's a terrifying choice, but it's a choice nonetheless. For many women, holding that bottle was the first time they felt any control over their own destiny. It was a quiet rebellion resting on your dressing table. So, you have the Aqua Tofana. The little vial sits innocently on your vanity, but how does it work? The secret to its success, and your safety, was that it was a slow-acting poison. This was not a dramatic, sudden death that would immediately raise suspicion. You would administer it in small doses, a few drops at a time, over a period of days or even weeks. You pour a bit into his nightly glass of wine. The liquid is clear, the taste is masked. He drinks it down and notices nothing. The first dose might only produce symptoms that look like a common cold. You, of course, are there to offer comfort. A few days later, you add another small dose to his soup. Now his cold seems to be getting worse, perhaps developing into the flu. He feels weak and tired. He complains of an upset stomach. Don't worry, you are there to care for him. You can almost feel the scratchy wool of the blanket as you tuck him into bed. You hear his shallow, raspy breaths filling the otherwise silent room. You place a cool, damp cloth on his forehead, which feels increasingly warm and clammy. You are the very picture of a loving, dutiful wife, nursing your sick husband. Your performance is essential to the success of the plan. As the weeks go on, his health continues to fail. Doctors might be called, but they would be baffled. The symptoms, like vomiting, diarrhea, and severe stomach pain, perfectly mimicked a progressive natural illness, like dysentery or some unknown fever. Throughout this entire ordeal, you are seen by everyone, friends, family, the priest, as a pillar of strength and devotion. You are praying for his recovery. You are tirelessly by his side. In a strange and dark way, you are using the patriarchy's own expectations of wifely duty as the ultimate shield for your crime. No one would ever suspect the grieving, caring woman dabbing his brow with a cool cloth. In the end, he passes away. The official cause of death is some wasting sickness, a tragic but natural event. At the funeral, you are the grieving widow. Your performance has been flawless from start to finish. You are now free. The home that once felt like your prison now is your own. The slow, perfect crime has given you back your life, and some historians estimate that as many as 600 men met their end this way. Through it all, you appear to be nothing more than an unlucky, devoted wife. You have become one of Giulia Tofana's many success stories. But here's the thing about an enterprise responsible for so many convenient deaths. Eventually, people start to notice. The sudden profusion of wealthy young widows in Rome began to raise eyebrows. A whisper here, a suspicious glance there. It was only a matter of time before the authorities began to connect the dots. Some historians believe the ring simply became overconfident, its success leading to carelessness. Others suggest the papal authorities, hearing the persistent rumors, eventually set a trap for one of the distributors, forcing her to reveal the network's secrets under interrogation. The most dramatic theory, however, places the blame on a single client's crisis of conscience. For a moment, you are that client. You have bought the aqua Tofana. You have administered the first few doses. But tonight, as you place the poisoned bowl of soup on the table, a wave of panic washes over you. Your hands tremble. You watch your husband raise the spoon to his lips, and you cannot bear it. You shout for him to stop. His confusion turns to anger, and under his questioning, the entire story comes tumbling out. Your confession is the single thread that unravels the entire criminal tapestry. Whatever the true cause, the downfall was swift and brutal. In July of 1659, Giulia's key accomplices were arrested and tried. They were publicly hanged in Rome's Campo de' Fiori, their deaths serving as a stark warning. The subsequent investigation implicated dozens of clients, mostly women from the lower classes who had no one to protect them. They were imprisoned for life. Your wealthier counterparts, however, were often shielded by their powerful families, quietly spirited away, or their involvement officially denied. The justice system, it seemed, was as class-conscious as the society it served. And what of Giulia Tofana herself, the entrepreneur at the center of it all? Her fate remains one of history's great mysteries. Some accounts claim she was caught, tortured, and executed alongside her followers. But more reliable sources suggest she died peacefully in her bed years before her network was ever exposed. She may have run one of the most prolific murder operations in history and simply gotten away with it. We will never know for sure. Her story is a chilling reminder of the dark, desperate currents that can flow just beneath the surface of a society, and the extraordinary lengths people will go to find an escape. For centuries, the poisoner had the upper hand. In the great halls of Renaissance Europe, you are locked in a silent, deadly arms race. It is a battle of concealment against detection, and for a very long time, concealment was winning. The air itself feels thick with suspicion. Every shadow in the tapestry-lined corridor seems to hide a lurking threat. This constant, gnawing fear drove the powerful to build fortresses not just of stone, but of ritual and paranoia. You step into the paranoid world of the noble kitchen. Here you see the system of defense in action, with the food taster at its very center. This isn't just a single person sipping from a cup. It is a comprehensive security network designed to protect the food supply from the moment it enters the castle gates. You can hear the clatter of pots and the hiss of the fire, but underneath it all is a quiet, methodical process of scrutiny. Every ingredient is logged, every cook watched, every dish tasted before it ever reaches the Lord's table. This web of distrust was the only thing standing between a nobleman and a painful, mysterious death. But even with guards and tasters, fear still found a way to seep through the cracks. When science and security failed to offer complete reassurance, people turned to something else: magic. In your hand, you might hold a strange, stone-like object, smooth and cool to the touch. This is a bezoar stone, one of the most prized antidotes of the age. Its name comes from the Persian phrase for poison expeller, and it was believed to be a universal cure. You watch as a servant carefully shaves a little powder from the stone into your wine. For the people of the time, this was not superstition, it was life insurance. Imagine you are a wealthy merchant in the 16th century, having just acquired one of these rare objects. The bezoar is actually a calcified mass, a sort of stone found in the digestive tracts of animals like goats. It feels dense and strangely organic in your palm. The room smells of beeswax from the candles and the faint, sweet scent of the wine it's meant to protect. While modern science suggests the calcium phosphate in these stones might have offered a very minor neutralizing effect against certain arsenic poisons, its true power was psychological. Holding it, you feel a small measure of control in a world of invisible threats, a solid defense against an unseen enemy. And 4. Now if a bezoar stone was a shield, the unicorn horn was a divine guardian. In the opulent dining hall of a king, you would see an even more theatrical defense. A servant approaches the royal goblet not with a spoon, but with a long, spiraled tusk of brilliant white. This, you are told, is a horn from the mythical unicorn, an object worth up to 10 times its weight in gold. The room is hushed as the horn is dipped into the king's wine. The air smells of roasted meats and expensive perfumes, but all eyes are on the goblet. Everyone is waiting to see if the horn will sweat, tremble, or shatter, signs that poison is present. Of course, these precious artifacts were not from unicorns. They were the long, elegant tusks of the narwhal whale, imported from the cold northern seas at immense cost. You can almost feel the chill of the Arctic water clinging to the object, a piece of a remote, mysterious world brought into the heart of European power. This ritual, repeated day after day, was a testament to the depths of their fear. It was a desperate plea to a magical world for the protection that the real world could not provide. Through it all, people clung to these objects as tangible symbols of safety. The poisoner's greatest and most reliable ally, however, was not secrecy or skill. It was the profound medical ignorance of the era. Imagine you are a Renaissance physician standing over the body of a wealthy nobleman who died in agony. The air in the room is stale, heavy with the scent of sickness and death. You perform a post-mortem examination, but your tools are rudimentary and your understanding of the human body is limited. You can see the signs of distress, but you have no way to distinguish the symptoms of arsenic poisoning from a severe case of cholera or dysentery. This inability to find the cause created the perfect environment for murder to masquerade as misfortune. For hundreds of years, this was the poisoner's shield. A slow, carefully administered dose of a substance like aqua tofana would mimic natural illness perfectly. You could see the victim waste away, complaining of stomach pains, thirst, and weakness, symptoms that baffled the best doctors. The smooth texture of the bedsheets would become a torment. The sound of a closing door would echo like a gunshot in their frayed nerves. And when they finally died, the cause would be listed as some generic malady. The truth was, a skilled poisoner could kill with almost complete impunity, leaving behind no clues that science at the time could ever hope to find. Certain. The age of the perfect, undetectable poison finally came to a dramatic end, not in a palace, but in a laboratory. To see how, you have to jump forward in time. The year is 1836, and you are in London. You are in a courtroom, the air thick with the smell of old paper and unwashed bodies. A British chemist named James Marsh is on the stand. He has been called as an expert witness in a murder trial, confident that he has found the chemical proof of arsenic poisoning in the victim. But there's a problem. His evidence, a yellowish precipitate of arsenic sulfide, has deteriorated. It's unstable. It couldn't be presented convincingly to the jury. You can feel the crushing weight of failure as the defendant is acquitted. The system has failed. The palpable frustration in the room is a bitter pill to swallow. Sometime later, the acquitted defendant reportedly confesses to the crime, confirming Marsh's suspicions and deepening his anger. He was right, but being right wasn't enough. Justice had been thwarted by the limitations of his own science. This failure became an obsession for Marsh. He dedicated himself to creating a definitive, reliable, and visually dramatic test that no jury could ever ignore. What he invented changed forensic science forever. In his laboratory, surrounded by the sharp, acidic smell of his experiments, he perfected the Marsh test. The process was brilliant in its simplicity. You would take a sample, perhaps from a victim's stomach, and treat it with zinc and acid. If arsenic was present, this chemical reaction would convert it into a toxic gas called arsine. The gas was then channeled through a heated glass tube. As the hot arsine gas passed over a cold ceramic surface, it would decompose. The arsenic would deposit itself onto the surface, creating a distinct silvery black metallic film, a perfect mirror. The test was revolutionary. It was incredibly sensitive, able to detect even minute traces of the poison, and its result was undeniable. There, shining on the ceramic plate, was the poison itself, dragged from the tissues of the victim and made visible to the world. The first time this test was used to secure a conviction was in France in 1840, in the sensational trial of a woman named Marie Lafarge. The event was a media sensation across Europe. You can imagine the public's fascination, reading the news in a gaslit parlour. For the first time, science had a definitive answer. The poisoner's favourite tool, arsenic, was no longer invisible. The age of the perfect poison was over. 6. The shadow of the poisoner hangs heavy over the culture of the Renaissance, a legacy of fear that lingered for centuries. In the highest levels of society, this constant threat bred a deep and corrosive paranoia. You can almost feel the tension in the air at a political summit, where every shared drink and every offered gift is viewed with suspicion. This fear fundamentally changed how people interacted, eroding the very possibility of trust between rulers, allies, and even family members. This legacy is so deep that it's subtly embedded in our own modern customs, like fossils of a more dangerous time. You are at a celebration, raising a glass for a toast. You clink your glass against your friends. This familiar tradition may be a faint, forgotten echo of a much grimmer practice. In medieval times, you would heartily slosh your drinks together, spilling wine from one cup into the other. It was a crude form of mutually assured destruction. It ensured that if your host was trying to poison you, they would poison themselves as well. Somehow, through the centuries, this violent precaution softened into a friendly clink. Even simple table etiquette has a dark origin story. At a formal dinner, you instinctively place your knife with the blade facing inward toward your plate. This wasn't always about politeness. In an age of high tempers and easily accessible weapons, this was a security measure. The warmth of the dining hall could quickly turn into a bloodbath. Turning the blade inward made it just a little bit harder for a dinner guest to suddenly grab their knife and attack their neighbor. These small rituals are the ghosts of a time when sharing a meal was an act of profound, and sometimes fatal, trust. In the end, what made the poisoner the most terrifying figure in this landscape of death was the nature of their crime. They represented the ultimate betrayal. A soldier with a sword was an open enemy. Their threat was clear and honest. But the poisoner was the enemy from within. They turned the most intimate and life-giving acts, a shared meal, a comforting drink, a lover's kiss, a scented glove, into vectors of death. You were attacked not from outside the castle walls, but from within your own home, by your own family, friends, or servants. This insidious violation of trust is why poison was considered the most cowardly, unnatural, and diabolical weapon of all, leaving a legacy of fear that still haunts our imagination. And with that, we gently close the formulary on this dark and clandestine art. The powders have settled, the whispered conspiracies have fallen silent, and the science of detection has finally cast a light into the shadows. We have felt the cold ambition of a cardinal killer and the quiet desperation of a wife seeking the aid of Giulia Tofana. As you lay in the stillness, perhaps you can feel the weight of that knowledge, the composition of inheritance powder, the secret of the poisoned glove. Thank you for being a confidant in this exploration. To know we have shared these secrets is a uniquely peaceful thought. The initiation is complete, and the knowledge of the poisoner's craft now rests with you. A like serves as your silent oath, a quiet nod to the figures we've met tonight, acknowledging the potent and terrible power of the secrets they once held. To subscribe is to formally enter the circle of keepers, ensuring that when the next whisper of a forgotten plot or a lost recipe is uncovered, you will be summoned to bear witness. Don't let these stories fade, become a guardian of their memory. And now, let the sound of my voice fade into the background. Your duties as a keeper are done for the night. The methods have been revealed, the motives understood. There is nothing left to concoct, nothing left to fear. There is only the gentle pull of sleep. Let the quiet resolution of history bring you peace, and drift into a deep and tranquil rest. The past will keep its secrets until we meet again. Good night.